Hello, YouTubers. Joe Kersey here on Thursday, December 14th at 15:52 in the afternoon Eastern Time. It's actually been, as these things go, a fairly benign day. Now, here's my little Planning Your Surgery, Ohio Health Grant Medical Center. Now, actually, I got the bulk of these materials the other day when I was over at A.J. Campbell's office. But today, I went down to what used to be called Grant South, which is now called Grant Bone and Joint. We used to more colorfully call it Grant Ear and Rear. I think I mentioned that before. So they did a lot of eye and ear and hemorrhoid surgery over there at one point. That's probably now only of historical interest and not too much of that either. But see, you've got, little pre-admission testing thing here, 12, 14, 17 at 9:30 in the morning. Okay, fair enough. So I dutifully got up at 5:30, got myself squared away, cleaned up, had a couple of cups of tea, took my meds, took a shower, Didn't fall down in the shower, didn't die in the shower. And so I thought, well, I better leave around 8:35 because that they want you to be there at 9:30. And I hate to be late. I mean, I absolutely hate to be late. So sure enough, it's a good thing I did because you had the two lanes that exited off of 71 southbound coming from Gemini Parkway, going south into Columbus. You had the lane that exited onto the westbound side of 270 and the lane that exited onto the eastbound side of 270 completely backed up for about, but almost 2 miles. So, of course, when you pull out into the lane next to the backed up lanes, you have to watch for these guys that get frustrated and they just sort of zip into the lane where you are without signaling or anything. So there were about three or four, not really close calls, but they could have been close calls. Of course, it was snowing a bit. I mean, when I say snowing, I don't mean like snow. You can't see more than about a quarter of a mile. No, it was like you had some occasional flakes coming down. Well, in Columbus, any snow coming from the sky at all, even in the absence of icing or anything. I mean, people, it's like their brains go into another universe. What do I do? 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 If there's even that much thought going on. But made it down there, and of course I took the wrong exit. They did all this construction here about 2 years ago, and they've rearranged the exits to Broad Street off of 71 going south. And I took it correctly about 2 weeks ago. But the signage is very confusing because it says downtown and Spring Street. Well, it used to be Spring Street exited off to the left and downtown was downtown. Basically any exit off that freeway took you into downtown. That's apparently not the case today. I mean, so today I've realized, okay, well, I know where I am. I said, I'll just go down and I'll turn onto Broad Street and it won't be a problem. Well, but then there was no way to turn onto Broad Street. And so I had to drive east on Long Street out to Hamilton Avenue. They're just almost by the Lincoln Theater there in the, well, let's say the less economically safe and desirable part of town. But at that time of day, when it's that cold, generally you don't have a lot of the colorful street life out there that you would have otherwise in, say, a hot summer evening. So I finally got there. Now I had to decide what parking garage to go to, because they said, "Oh, just pull up and have valet parking. Park your thing." I thought, there's no way in hell I'm going to let some guy, I don't know, get in my truck and drive it. That just ain't going to happen. So I thought, well, I could just go to the 6th Street garage. That's the one I used when I went to my surgeon's office. Plus, that's got a clearance of 6 foot 8 inches, which is plenty on my truck. But I get to the one. I thought there was one that was sort of like right next to Grant South or Bone and Joint. I just so many double entendres are springing to mind. But it's like, the one on 6th Street is called the Blue Garage. The one I went to and the entrance was off of Grant Avenue. It's called the Green Garage. Plus, but the entrance ramps are very, very narrow, and the clearance is 6 feet 5 inches. And there's a big placard out at the entrance saying, "Non-standard vehicles should not enter here." Well, it depends on how you define a non-standard vehicle. Well, it turns out that there was just enough clearance that my truck's roof was not ripped off. In fact, I actually parked next to an F-250. It was an F-100. No, F-150. That looked to be about a half-inch taller than my truck. And his roof was still intact, so, okay. Made my way in and got directed to the place, and sat down in my chair in the waiting area at 9:29. So I just made it. Actually, they run a pretty good operation down there. I have to say, I don't know, impressed would be a strong word, but I didn't feel like I was being jacked around, and I thought that everything was being done properly, and that it actually needed to be done. So, if you're going to have somebody gather data about your bod, that's probably the best way to run things, isn't it? Staff was uniformly pleasant, absolutely professional. Didn't act like they were projecting any sort of attitude. No gripes. And of course, when you sort of spill the magic beans that, you say, "Oh, well, I'm a retired doc," they tend to if they haven't been sharpening up their act before that, they tend to sharpen up their act after that. But that wasn't the case this time. I mean, they were fine all the way through. And then I guess they actually do have an MD or they have a physician come in and talk with you. But first, I had an EKG here, which I will show you. I have no secret. We have no secrets. We have few secrets here on the Joe Kersey channel. Now you'll notice this thing says it's just otherwise a normal EKG, just because I've just got sinus bradycardia, which is not. That's not unexpected given the amount of beta blockers I take. And the doc comes in and he says, well, I don't see an old MI on this thing. And as I looked at it, and have been looking at it, it doesn't look significantly different from the one that I had done in 93. Well, it was 93 or 96. Doesn't matter. Which I tried to find this afternoon. I thrashed around in my office and was moving files and coughing on dust and things, But okay, fine. If the guy says it's normal, it's fine by me. You want to call it normal. It's certainly not abnormal in the sense that you'd look at this and go say, "Oh fuck," I have encountered those in my time. Not on me, fortunately. But we have something called poor R wave progression here. See, there's some R wave progression here, and then it gets less, and then in the next lead in V4 here, that's V3. In V4, it's still diminished. Ideally, these R waves, that's the wave that goes upward, should get increasingly higher as you go across the V leads. Well, that's what the guy used to make the call about the first, the MI back in 93. He says, you got enough R wave progression there that, you could very well have had an inferior MI. Another thing that's notable on this, and it's really kind of heartening news for me, is see these relatively high T waves there? That indicates that I don't have a low potassium, or at least as far as my heart's concerned, I don't have a low potassium. And that's very good news indeed for me. Yet it's not high enough to splay these things out and put me at risk of, just fading away. That's also good news. Good news, yay! It turns out what they took was, and I found this out when I got the after visit summary, which is actually kind of a nice thing that they do, because they give you sort of a little summary of all the stuff they've talked to you about. Because most people wouldn't remember. A lot of people don't remember any of that stuff because they're just sort of like shell shocked. Oh, why am I here? Why am I here? Why am I here? The guy says, take my beta blockers in the morning and my ACE inhibitor in the morning, and my levothyroxine in the morning of surgery. Interestingly, they don't want me to take the hydrochlorothiazide, which that shouldn't make a damn bit of difference. But I'll play their game on that one. That's no big deal for me. And of course, they say, no more aspirin after today. Well, that just isn't going to happen, guys. It's either that or I've got to become addicted to narcotics by the time I go in your damn facility. Because, I need that aspirin for my cervical arthritis. among other things. Shoulder arthritis, knee arthritis, hip arthritis, you name it. The guy says, well, Tylenol is acceptable. And I said, no, it's not. I said, acetaminophen is a direct liver toxin. I can't believe that they're still allowed to sell that in the United States. In England, by the way, it's called paracetamol. That's a direct liver toxin. Now, look, I'm going to give you a little historical background on this. See, I've been around long enough. I can tell you some history about some of this stuff. Back when I was in training, which is in the early 70s, one of the major sort of poisoning worries for parents and in ERs, particularly in Children's Hospital ER here in Columbus, were kids that would get into the aspirin and eat 30 aspirin. Now, I don't have any idea in the world how a kid could eat 30 aspirin and keep them down without, vomiting up tons of blood and being massively ill. But those kids who kept the stuff down, they would, of course, become acidotic, and they'd start hyperventilating and all that kind of thing. And, after about 30 of the 5-grain aspirin tablets, these kids would die sometimes. So that was a big poisoning worry. Along about the same time, we had a phenomenon called Reye's syndrome, R-E-Y-E' syndrome, in which kids that had chicken pox had been given aspirin to control their fever. Strictly because there was a statistical correlation. It was assumed that the aspirin was causing Reye's syndrome. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. But what it did was, it essentially browbeaten, brainwashed parents into not giving their kids aspirin until they hit the age of about 14, 15 maybe. Now, about 3 or 4 years later, the incidence of Reye's syndrome essentially dropped to 0. Now, I'm sure there are parents out there giving kids aspirin for fevers all over the United States, and some of those fevers are due to chicken pox. And somewhere along the line, Reye's syndrome just went away. Now, my thinking on this is that the Reye's syndrome was actually caused by some really odd, as yet unidentified infectious agent, or it was some sort of odd immune response to an infectious agent. That's more likely. But what then happened, and we're finally getting to the conclusion of this tale of woe and lament, is that they started saying, oh, if your child has a fever, give them Tylenol or acetaminophen. Well, now here we have a situation. This is an interesting situation. Here we have a drug, aspirin. 30 of the big 5-grain tablets which will start to kill people, generally, and most surely start to kill children. And you say you want to replace it with a drug called Tylenol, acetaminophen, of which 12 of what would be the 5-grain equivalent tablets, the 325 milligram tablets, 12 of those taken at one time will almost always reliably kill you. And it won't be a pleasant death either, I'll tell you that. because you go into renal, you go into hepatic failure. It is a direct liver toxin. So here you can't buy a bottle of carbon tetrachloride in the United States anymore because it's a direct liver toxin. Yet on every pharmacy shelf in the United States, you have this direct liver toxin for sale. And the packaging, in most instances, encourages parents to give it to their kids. And so anyway, I said to this, I think this was the nurse that was discharging me, and she said, "Oh, you can take Tylenol." I said, "There is no way on God's green earth I'm going to take Tylenol." That, to me, that borders on malpractice to tell somebody that. Oh, here, take a direct liver toxin. That's just so wrong on so many levels. You might have heard it here first. Let's see, apparently I was counseled by Dr. A. Catula, Douglas A. Catula, who was a nice guy. He asked me about my tattoos. He wanted to know the meaning of all this stuff. That's nice. Encounter for pre-op examination. Pre-op cardiovascular examination, yes. We discussed, any potential coronary artery disease I might have had. Yes, we did that. Essential hypertension, yes. Acid reflux disease, I don't think we really talked about that, but that's, every now and again I take ranitidine. Not so much for the reflux. I used to reflux a lot when I was a lot heavier, but not so much now. But occasionally I do take ranitidine for feeling like I'm about ready to throw up. Acquired underactive thyroid, yes, that's true. And obesity. I love the obesity. Well, because they're using the BM, body mass index thing. I thought, Bud, guys, you should have seen me about 4.5, 5 years ago, and I was about 40 pounds heavier. And you should have seen me about 20 years before that when I was weighed upwards of 270 pounds. That's obese. Strangely, though, I always carried myself like I wasn't really obese. It's like I never had one of these big guts that hung over my belt. And, I didn't look like one of the people in Walmart. And so they did the blood pressure and stuff, and these numbers seemed to square with my blood pressure I took this morning before I went down there. So I really have no major things to say about this. And then they gave me, they reproduced my list of meds, which I gave them by taking them. A list of meds. So that's it. And so by the grace of God, I found my way back onto the freeway and got home safely. And it's been a cold bastard today. I'll tell you, it's only 20 right now, and I think it hasn't gotten over 23 all day long. 23. That's Fahrenheit. So I got home around then. So I got home by 11:15 in the morning. Maybe a little later than that, Eastern time. So, that's been my major adventure for today. Excuse me. So next Thursday, I don't know what time on Thursday. Haven't been told that yet. Now apparently, the blood they drew blood for obviously the clotting stuff and H&H and platelets and things, and then they got and I'm glad they're getting this because I want to see these numbers myself. I've been very intensely interested to know these values. BUN, creatinine, potassium, glucose, which this morning would have functionally been a fasting glucose for all intents and purposes. So it give me some indication of how, if I'm diabetic. I don't think I'm diabetic. It's one of these things that if I were truly diabetic, I'd be dead by now. So that's yeah. They took the blood, and the woman who did it was very, very good at her job and very pleasant to deal with. And yeah. So good show. So all in all, I'm going to give the Grand Prix mission testing an A for the actual encounter, and I'll give them maybe a C plus for parking facility. Alrighty, so now I'm going to say bye-bye, YouTubers. Alright.